of the things we do when we film people is, you're absolutely right. We get absolute naturalism as much as possible without it's a big, I know,
I know what you mean.
Totally complex. But one of the ways we try to do it is by not telling the respondents what we're there to do.
Yes,
and by
well,
spending,
that raises issues itself.
Well, in terms of ethics, no, because they finally find out what it's about. They do end up knowing what it's about,
of course.
But to begin with, we don't tell them, so that they don't become sensitized.
But then do you get them to sign release forms?
Yes.
So they go in signing a release form having no idea the purpose of their being filmed? Other
than that it's for research, and that it's going to be viewed by a company that they will be identified. Right. But
they do know quite a bit about what they're being filmed for already.
But they
will form notions in their mind immediately.
Well, they don't know who the company is.
No.
They don't know what the product is that we're exploring, or the service, or the brand.
Yeah.
But they know it's a research project.
I mean, if a camera was just pointed at me by anybody without knowing anything, and then if I knew it was for research, if I knew it was for research for a company, that would change my behaviour.
Yes.
And the way I mean, because I know what you're filming me for.
Yes.
My mode of presentation is immediately, how can I put it, adapts itself in some way or another.
We have a distinction that I make, which is acting normally and being normal. People are very good at acting normally. We try to get to the stage.
We do it the whole time. It's a ceaseless process.
Yes. Being normal is a kind of sweet spot of the observations that we do, which is around capturing events where you get a lot of latent behaviour, you get a lot of, and these are kind of distant. These are somebody's shopping, etc. They're on a completely different universe when it comes to their behaviour and what they're choosing and what they're doing.
Yeah.
If they're having conversations with one another, the length of time we spend with them, for example, the sorts of things when I pick up the camera and when I put the camera back down again will disrupt in their minds the sorts of things that we're trying to capture. And we do get naturalism. I can show you, well, inverted commas naturalism. I can show you lots and lots of material.
No doubt about it.
So that's a kind of quality control and hygiene issue from our point of view when we capture this data.
From my point of view, I mean, when I first started making films, way back in when was it? Early 70s. I really believed that one's whole job as a filmmaker was to be a fly on the wall, to be as observational as possible, and to not affect and not direct in any sense of the word at all. Maybe converse with people, maybe draw people out on issues, but don't sit them down and interview. Let it bubble up naturally, at minimal direction. I must admit, as I have progressed through life, I feel that was a naive way to approach it, because in the first place it's unreal. So admit it's unreal, and then yes, go for the behaviour that you want, and as a director and as a filmmaker try and enhance it, because film has nothing to do with reality. Film is ultimately enhancing behaviour in some way to express itself, to create a truth out of reality, which is not reality. I.e., there is what I call theoretically the pro-filmic, that thing which human beings do before a camera is present. The minute a camera is present, everything becomes filmic space, not pro-filmic spaces. And that is a qualitatively totally different space. Now, when you admit to the existence of a filmic space, you are already becoming a director, in some sense, just because you popped a camera down there. Then there are gradations of how artificial that filmic space becomes. And what I find interesting to discuss is where you, personally as a filmmaker, put yourself within the filmic space. To ever think that with a camera you're in the pro-filmic space is onanism.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I think we call it participant observation. Clients want us to be there to experience it, so we provide our own perspective of what we experienced when we were in the field. So the people who were filming it are in the workshops, in the meetings and the sessions that we have. But nonetheless, interpretation of the data is critical. So we're not just, the films that we present very little of that film is illustrative. You can watch the film and see what's happening. The film is there for stimulus. If somebody on film says they do something because of X, Y, or Z, or you see them do, that is merely one perspective. Even though we're looking at that consumer, that is a perspective, that is a source of stimulus. We're working qualitatively. We're taking a piece of understanding, a piece of observation, and we are adding meaning to it. And that meaning could be quite far removed from what that person is actually doing or even saying.
Very much so.
And that's what we're kind of paid to do. And I was just wondering how much of that is there in your course in terms of rather than the kind of practicalities and the theories behind filmmaking, but the actual interpretation of that data into something that can be meaningfully used by clients, let's say, rather than audiences, which are two different groups.
Well, your clients are to some extent an audience.
Of course.
I mean, oh, Lord. We are not into the theoretical analysis of finished films. That is done in two different modules. The history of ethnographic and documentary filmmaking and critical visual culture.